Thakur Kahamora Swarup Rupa Kahasanatan Kahamora Swarup Rupa Kahasanatan Kahadasa Raghunatha Patita Pavan Raghunatha Patita Pavan Kahamora Patanyuga Kaha Kaviraj Amora Patanyuga Kaha Kaviraj Eka Kale Kota Gela Gora Nataraj Gora Nataraj Pasane Kutibo Mata Anale Pashibo Kutibo Nata Anale Pasibo Goranga Gunera Niri Kotagile Babo Se Samba Sangira Sange Ye Koilo Bila Se Sangana Paya Kande Narotamadas Ye Anilo Premadana Karuna Prachur Premadana Karuna Prachur Heno Prabhu Kotagela Acharya Thakur Heno Prabhu Kotagela Acharya Thakur He who brought the treasure of divine love and who was filled with compassion and mercy, where has such a personality as Srinivas Acharya gone? Where are my Swarup Damodar and Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatana? Where is Raghunath Das, the savior of the fallen? Where are my Raghunath Bhatta and Gopala Bhatta? And where is Krishnadas Kaviraj? Where did Lord Gauranga, the great dancer, suddenly go? I will smash my head against the rock and enter into the fire. Where will I find Lord Gauranga, the reservoir of all wonderful qualities? Being unable to obtain the association of Lord Gauranga, accompanied by all of these devotees in whose association he performed his pastimes, Narottama Das simply weeps. Sorry, I just came back from the land of Lord Gauranga, and it's maybe a little bit of separation. So today is the disappearance of Rasikananda Das. He actually is a disciple of Shamananda, the famous Shamananda who traveled with Narottama Das Thakur and Srinivasacharya on book distribution. And just a little bit about Shamananda. We've probably all heard this story. He began his life known as, with the name of Duki, which is sad. And until he met his spiritual master, who he prayed very, very, very ardently for, very fervently. He prayed and prayed and prayed until a voice from the sky said, "Today you will meet your spiritual master." And then he stayed up all night weeping. And this is about Shamananda, by the way, not Rasikananda, who was Duki. His name was Duki. And then over the horizon, his spiritual master appeared, and he was able to take the darshan of his spiritual master. Spiritual master was named Hridaya Chaitanya Goswami. And then he was so absorbed in love of Krishna, Shamananda, who was Duki Krishnadas then. Hridaya Chaitanya Goswami actually gave him the name Duki Krishnadas when he was initiated, which was very quickly after meeting. And then Duki Krishnadas was very absorbed in Krishna's pastimes. He went to the land of Vrindavan and was wandering the streets of Vrindavan chanting, and came upon a nupara, an anklet, a beautiful golden anklet in the street. And he picked it up and marveled at it and was like, wow. And then a little bit later, as he was sort of just dumbfounded, because if you can imagine, this was the nupara of Srimati Radharani, if you can imagine what it could possibly look like. I mean, I can't. Probably extremely dazzling and detailed and, you know, all the things, something Radharani wore. And Lalita, her dearmost friend, came and said, "Oh, Prabhu, I've lost, my friend has lost her nupara, her anklet. Have you seen it?" And he pulled it out, and Lalita took the anklet from him and said, "Oh yes, this is it." And then at that point, you know, he was given the opportunity to enter into that pastime by the mercy of Lalita. And he could see Srimati Radharani. And there's a whole other story with that. But then that's when Lalita actually gave Duki Krishnadas the name of Shamananda. And, you know, he was an eternal associate of Srimati Radharani. He was a manjari in her pastimes. And anyway, then there was a whole chain of events where, you know, he had gotten sort of a tilak branding, and then he went back to his guru, and his guru was beating him because he thought he took reinitiation from somebody. And, you know, he did not. He was actually, had conferred or convened with Srimati Radharani. And then, you know, at that point, Hridaya Chaitanya Goswami understood that this Duki Krishnadas, now known as Shamananda, was, you know, indeed a very exalted personality, and recanted that. So actually, Rasikananda Das was one of only one or two actually devotees or disciples of Shamananda. And Rasikananda Das was actually the son of a king. He was also known as Rasika Murari. He was the son of a king, and he was also very absorbed in Krishna's pastimes and Lord Gauranga's pastimes as well, by the mercy of Shamananda. And then Shamananda, Rasikananda's, I won't say claim to fame, but his main notable accomplishment in his lifetime is Shamananda actually ordered him to go and preach love of God, but particularly in this one village called Utkala, that he was just full. It was kind of like Las Vegas. It was just like a whole whole village of nothing but, you know, dacoits and sinners and, you know, debauchees and just anything you can think of. The worst kind of personalities. He actually ordered, Shamananda actually ordered Rasikananda to go preach in that particular village first. So he went there, and it was full of all those types of people, including atheists, Mayavadis, you know, just all kind of heinous sorts of people. And Rasikananda, from his purity and his love of God, he was actually able to convert everyone in that village. And, he went on from there to, preach in more villages in that area, even to animals. He had actually even, from the accounts that I've read, it seemed like he was such a pure personality and so infused with love of God that he actually, even animals such as tigers and different kind of elephants and things that wouldn't normally respond to a human, trying to talk to them or sort of preach to them, he was able to convert those beings, so he was just a reservoir of all good qualities, a reservoir of love of God. So that's Rasikananda Das. And the other personality that is his disappearance day is Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, which he's part of our Guru Parampara, so we have a lot more information on Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. And I pulled up a few things because there were some interesting things I found. He was born in Bangladesh, and around there's 1776 or 1780, like that. He was born there, and he was always kind of a renounced personality from the very beginning of his life. He seemingly, as is most of our Guru Parampara that we've heard of, he was immediately Krishna conscious, practically upon birth. So he didn't really have so much time to waste throughout his life, and he began his bhajan from a very, very early age. But there's not a whole lot of information about those sort of early times of his life. There's quite a lot of accounts of later on when he really took up the bhajan, and he was an associate of contemporary of Bhaktivinoda Thakur and of many of the Vaishnavas of that time. And he lived to be very old. There's some accounts that say he was 144 years old, 146 years old, 150 years old, like that. So he lived to be very old. And he began his bhajan at Suryakund in Vrindavan. So he was in Vrindavan for many years, chanting at Suryakund, also Radhakund. He took Babaji initiation from a personality known as Madhusudana Das. Then he began a practice of living 6 months in Navadvip and 6 months in Vrindavan. So he was going back and forth. And he, as he aged in his bhajan, and he was very renounced, obviously, being a Babaji. He wasn't that old when he took the Babaji initiation. He began, the renunciation was so great that he slowly began to bend. I'm sure everybody's seen photos of how he just began to bend in sort of a semicircle. Yeah, and that's another thing. A while ago I was thinking about having, because pretty much every temple has his picture on the altar, but somehow we don't. And I was actually trying to figure out how to do that by today, but I couldn't find the frames that match the other frames in time, so I'm going to have to, do all of that. But he definitely is someone that is very important to our Gaudiya Vaishnava history. So just a few of his pastimes before I get to the main, because I'm sure we know the main is he's the one that verified the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, of which now I've noticed as we were touring around that area of the Yoga Peeth and Navadvip, there's actually quite a lot of Janmasta sites that, someone is claiming that different people are claiming, probably, I don't want to criticize, but probably for some kind of fame or recognition, but there's many sort of, even if you look on Google Maps, they're like dotted all around, that there's a claim that that's where Lord Chaitanya was born, and this is where Lord Chaitanya was born, this is where Lord Chaitanya was born. But actually, at the Yoga Pit, I'll just talk about it right now, and then we'll talk more about some of what he did at the Yoga Pit. Formerly, that was a site that was owned by Muslims, and it was just kind of a vacant lot or sort of a field. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, at some point, wanted to find out the exact thing, because we know about Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he was 100% business. You know, he wanted to constantly get the authentic, you know, the authentic scoop on everything having to do with Lord Chaitanya. So he consulted a lot of old, you know, scriptures or papers or, you know, things, and asked a lot of the old folk at the, you know, in the Navadvip area, where is this, you know, place where Lord Chaitanya had appeared. And finally, it was narrowed down to this field that was owned by Muslims, or this, you know, it was a lot. It was owned by Muslims. It was vacant. It was empty, except in the spot that is presumably where Lord Chaitanya was born. There was a proliferation of tulsi, very large tulsi plants. And so he actually asked Jagannath Das Babaji, who he had been taking very much instruction from. You know, Bhaktivinoda Thakur actually took initiation from this other personality called Vipina Bihari Das, or Goswami, and who was a bit of a Mayavad, but I'm not sure if, I can't recollect right off the top of my head why he took initiation from him, but he was actually taking much more sort of shiksha from Jagannath Das Babaji. He was kind of his, and he was actually calling him Sarvabhauma, which meant the topmost of the Vaishnavas, because Jagannath Das Babaji was also, you know, very, very, very focused on his bhajan of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, very focused on and Lord Krishna, but he knew that they were non-different. So he was known as Sarvabhauma to Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur actually consulted with him quite frequently. So one time, Bhaktivinoda Thakur asked Jagannath Das Babaji to come and look at this site. You know, please, Prabhu, come and look at this and see what you think. And Jagannath Das Babaji, at that point, was mostly invalid. He couldn't walk. He was, you know, pretty much completely bent over. And he was carried around in a basket on the back of his very strong servant, Vamsi, who was a Brajbasi. And when he went to that site that Bhaktivinoda Thakur had pointed out to him, Jagannath Das Babaji then leapt out of the basket and started actually chanting, you know, Nimai Janmashta, Nimai Janmashta. He actually, you know, in his heart, and he could feel that vibration there. And actually I can attest that when one goes to the Yoga Pit, it's still extremely strong. You know, Lord Chaitanya didn't appear very long ago in that place. I think it's something like 532 years ago, something like that. So it's still very, very, very strong, that vibration in that place. And so he leapt out of the basket, and he verified that for Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So, you know, for us as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, he's a very integral part of our Gaudiya Vaishnava history, as that kind of devotee that has verified those things and was able to understand Gaura Lila on a very deep level. So a few other interesting points with Jagannath Das Babaji. We visited his, he has his full body samadhi in Navadvip, the town of Navadvip, which is easily reached from Sridham Mayapur. You just cross the Ganges into the town. And actually it's very close to the temple of Dhameshwar, which is the deity that Vishnupriya, Lord Chaitanya's wife, had worshipped. He's actually a deity that was carved. He ordered to be carved in his likeness because he was taking sannyas, and Vishnupriya was so bereft, and she couldn't contain herself, so he actually had this deity carved so she could worship that deity. And that deity is still there today, not in the original temple, but just adjacent to that there's a little bit newer building that the deity stands. And pretty much you go down one street and take a couple of turns, it's only about a 5-minute walk from that part of Navadvip where Dhameshwar stands, is the full body samadhi of Jagannath Das Babaji. And there are deities there. There's a Radha Krishna deity, actually, and there's another deity called Gaur Gopal, and that's the Gaur Nitai deities that are standing there as well. And then there's Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra. Very beautiful deities, and the temple is very, very nicely maintained. The deities are very nicely maintained. And at the time when that was also not only his full body samadhi, but that was his bhajan kutir. He was there for many years chanting and worshiping. And at the time when he was there, the Ganges ran right next to it. Now it's, as we have heard, the Ganges is kind of always undulating and changing its course and revealing new things and covering old things. So now the Ganges is kind of a little bit far away from that bhajan kutir of Jagannath Das Babaji. But he was there for many years doing his bhajan in between times of being in Vrindavan, shuttling between the two places. And over time it was developed because, he had his servant and, then he had some more persons that were there to also have his darshan and also do their bhajan. So there's a whole, it's a very small complex. And at some point a well was installed by a wealthy woman at the time who was very favorable to what he was doing, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And they still have festivals there, for Jagannath Das Babaji. They start there. I saw they have a lot of parikrams around Navadvip Mandal parikrams that begin at Jagannath Das Babaji's, because he actually loved Navadvip very much. When he was about to leave his body, he was in Vrindavan. It was his period of time when he was in Vrindavan. But it's said that he proclaimed that he wanted to go to Navadvip to leave his body. And, his servant and others were saying, why? Why wouldn't you want to leave in, Vrindavan? Which, as we know, many people do. And he said that Krishna is kind of like a ruling king, and he is very strict about taking offense to things that someone might have done. And Jagannath Das Babaji was so careful that he, basically said and he felt that he needed to go to Navadvip because, in contrast, Lord Gauranga was the most magnanimous. He takes no offense. He just wants to give the mercy. He's not, he's not that, as hard as Krishna in his estimation. He's not as heavy-handed. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of his things he did on his bhajan, because we hear about some of the things that these great personalities, such as Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had performed in their bhajan, and it's always very inspirational. So Jagannath Das Babaji would also leap out of his basket whenever he heard any kirtan. He was very, very, very attached to the holy names. He gave everybody instruction. One of them was to realize the supreme goal of life. You must repeat Harinam regularly and steadfastly. Steadiness is so important that it must be maintained, even at the cost of one's life. So he was very, very attached to that chanting of the holy names. He actually chanted each day. It said 128 rounds per day minimum. And also each day he, and that was during the night too, you know, he, like many personalities, he never really slept. And in each morning he would rise and offer 1,108 dandavats to his deities, the deities that he worshipped. So he was very strict in his reverence, his, you know, his bhajan toward the deities as well. He would always follow chaturmasya, being an ascetic. The first month he ate only 4 bananas in the evening. The second month, only guavas. The third month, only took whey. And the fourth month, he only boiled banana flowers without salt and ate them. He once begged a roti from a Vrindavan sweet streeper. And hearing that, the men of Vrindavan criticized him. You know, why are you begging rotis from a street sweeper? And he said, you know, you are all very learned people. Don't you understand that the dust of the Braj Raj of Vrindavan is the most worshipful thing? And if this person, this street sweeper, is actually breathing and being covered in the dust, and, you know, he's basically worshiping the dust, and he's the topmost personality. Why, you know, of course I want to have that prasadam that's coming from that personality. And everybody could understand that he was perfectly correct on that. And then when he lived in the Navadvip area, he was very, very respectful of all the residences, including the dogs and other animals in the street. And sometimes when Bihari would cook for him and serve, you know, he didn't take it right away because he wasn't very attached. So some dogs would come and start, you know, taking things off the plate. And Bihari was, you know, like, oh my gosh, you know, I mean, can you imagine if your guru, you cook for your guru and you set it there and then some animal starts to eat it? Bihari was outraged, and Jagannath obviously said, no, these are residents of Navadvip. Of course I'm going to allow them to eat what they want, you know. We have to respect them just as much as anyone else. And that's his, you know, they're not ordinary living entities, that's his position. All of the Basis in the Dham. And when he got older and he couldn't see or walk, you know, he was just carried around in this basket. And he still had many disciples that he spoke with, you know, all the time. It said that he had 2 disciples when he needed to actually see something. His eyelids were hanging over his eyes so heavily, drooping so heavily, and it said that he had 2 disciples that would stand on either side and actually lift up the skin flap so he could actually see what he was needing to read, or, you know, if he was worshiping Tulsi Devi or worshiping the deities like that. And he would tell his disciples about the supreme goal of life to repeat Harinam. Never forget Gora, who is more merciful and benevolent than Krishna. Krishna is just like a ruler, is like a just ruler who takes into account your offenses and his administration of justice. Gora does not take your offenses into account. Whereas Krishna is more interested in the dispensation of justice, Gora is more interested in the distribution of mercy. From this point of view, Gora Kirtan is more useful than Krishna Kirtan. Gora Kirtan means Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar, Shiva Sati, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Krishna is the avatar of Dwapara Yuga. Gora is the Kali Yuga avatar. We should sing the name and glories of the avatar in whose age we live, just as in a kingdom we praise the ruling king. Jaya Sachinandana Gaura Hari. Jaya Sachinandana Gaura Hari. There's also a temple in Gopal Bagh in Vrindavan that houses Gauranitai deities once worshipped in Surya Kund by Jagannath Das Babaji. He lived quite a lot of time in Surya Kund. One time his disciple, I can't really, there's nowhere that talks about how long this disciple was with him, but from most accounts it was many, many years. And Bihari, who would serve him very steadfastly, became very sick. He had a severe fever, and he was unconscious for many days. And a doctor was called from Kolkata and said the sickness was too strong and Bihari was not going to survive, and that he was probably could go any time, even that very night. And then Jagannath Das Babaji sat near the servant and put tulsi on his tongue and started chanting the holy names. And after half an hour, Bihari was miraculously cured, just from that sincere, the tulsi and the holy names, and that, Jagannath Das Babaji's loving reciprocation with Bihari. Also, it's said that another time he came upon a personality who had some kind of a skin disorder, and it might have been leprosy. It wasn't really mentioned exactly what, but he had lesions all over his body, and Jagannath Das Babaji told him, just go roll in the dust of Navadvip. That's all you have to do. And he did that, and he went and rolled around, and within a few days, all of his skin disease was cured. And before he took up that Bhajan Kutir residence in Navadvip, he wasn't very much attached to living anywhere. He, didn't, and he had so many invites to stay in different ashrams, but he and Bihari just started to live under a tree, like many of these great personalities do. They're not very attached, so they live under a tree. And then this devotee, Madhava Dutt, bought land near that tree and gifted it to Babaji Maharaj. Actually, we saw a few very large trees in the area that were of course I couldn't read because it was in Bengali, but it could have been one of those trees that he sat under, because this wasn't that long ago, And there's many trees both in Navadvip and Vrindavan that are very, very old. In fact, the tree at the Yogapith, the neem tree, it's quite enormous. And we were talking, I was with Divya Nitai Leela, who does speak Bengali, talking to the pujari there, and from what we could gather from what he said, that was actually one of the sort of babies of the original neem tree that Nimai was born under. So that was like a sproutlet that had come off of that. But that tree definitely looks like it could be over 500 years old. It's absolutely enormous. And there's quite a lot of those trees in Navadvip and Vrindavan. So then from that tree in that area, that's when that little complex was started to manifest. So he was quite materially renounced, but very spiritually rich. And, in that area, you can see practically, there's temples on every little corner, Divya was saying that, and we didn't get to see a lot of Navadvip recently. We just kind of took a real short tour around. But she was saying there's like 1,000 temples just in that little area of Navadvip. And indeed, when we were going through different areas with rickshaw, there was, everywhere you see the Panchatattva. Like everywhere you see the Panchatattva, you know, and which is, you know, very beautiful to see that. And it you can feel that that was those areas that they would sort of wander around in. You could feel the energy, you know, the spiritual energy. It was very surcharged in that Navadvip area, very surcharged with that. And, you know, even in the back of little, I saw one, I should have taken a picture. There was one little sweet store where you cross the Ganges, the little boat area, the boat launch area. It was called Goloka Sweets. And I was like, wow. And in that little sweet shop, there was a lovely little altar. You know, there was a really nice altar of Radha and Krishna and Gaura Nitai in the back of the sweet shop. You know, so everywhere they're, you know, worshiping Gaura Nitai, and sometimes Gaura Gadadhar, but I didn't see that quite as much as, you know, as outwardly being worshipped. But it was very beautiful seeing all those places in Navadvip. And the full body samadhi of Jagannath Das Babaji, you know, is so well maintained by these other, they're quite young actually. There's one sort of Baba there that I would say he's maybe in his mid-30s or late 30s at most. He wasn't that old, but he was there very meticulously. You know, everything was polished very wonderfully, all the brass and copper. There was a mix of paraphernalia they were using. It was polished very meticulously. They would bring Ganges water for the worship, and, you know, everything was clean and swept. And Jagannath Das Babaji still had, you know, it's cold in the morning there right now, a little bit. I mean, I don't know, 65 is cold to them. I mean, it's pretty nice for us for a morning temperature, but, you know, he was wrapped up very nicely in a woolen chadar and very meticulously maintained there. And I actually took some pictures. I thought about trying to interface with this screen, but I don't quite know how to do that. But if anybody wants to see those pictures, I'm happy to show, because the mandir, the samadhi mandir was very peaceful, but it was very, very potent. You could actually feel that urgency to chant the Harinam, you know, to take shelter of Lord Gauranga, to try to better understand the mood of Gaura Nitai there. And he, this Baba also was worshipping these deities that they're just lovely. You know, the Krishna's face looks like Kandarpa. It's just, it's such a sweet, cherubic, you know, very chubby. They're very chubby deities, you know, very nicely fed. They look like they're very nicely fed. And yeah, right down the road, Goloka Sweets, and the kitchen was in the back, and the fire was going, and there was other servants there, and they were still, you know, it was very vibrant still, that Samadhi Mandir. Sometimes you visit some places in the Dham, like we visited the Vamsi Gopal temple, which is actually the first, and that's in Vrindavan. That was the first place that Sri Prabhupada took up residence in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, that he signed a lease there. And I think he stayed there for a couple of years, the Vamsi Gopal, before he went to Radha Damodar. And it's kind of a little bit hidden, you know, it's in a corner, and it's kind of, you have to go through Loy Bazaar, and it's kind of in a back, like a back road of sorts. And, you know, there's still a lot of hidden gems that you can feel, you know, the potency there. So it's definitely a rich experience when you visit these important places in the Dham. And Jagannath Das Babaji, you know, as one of our, you know, main gurus in our parampara, you know, being the emblem of, you know, material renunciation, and just really didn't want to be bothered with anything that would disturb his bhajan, and very magnanimous towards all living beings, very very kind to his servants and his devotees. You know, you hear sometimes about Gora Kishore Das Babaji, who was, you know, he was a little bit, I'm going to say a little bit cantankerous of sorts, you know, because he was very fixed in his bhajan. But Jagannath Das Babaji seemed a little more, you know, he had many disciples that he talked to regularly, and they had his darshan regularly, so he seemed a little bit more open about giving them instruction and the importance of the worship of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we should all remember these personalities and, you know, try to understand their mood and enter into their space. You know, a personal favorite of mine has always been Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, which a lot of celebration was going on at the time for his 150th birthday, his anniversary of his appearance. I think there was a beautiful celebration at the temple with many visiting leaders in the area of the Chaitanya Math and different other sort of branches of the Chaitanya Math. You know, it was kind of a unity celebration of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and also could deeply enter into that mood. Actually, there was one bhajan written about, you know, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada. There was a bhajan that we sung that I've never heard of, and you know, there's so much, you just have to really, you know, when you start scratching the surface, there's so much depth, and you just have to dig down a little bit and try to catch that mercy and really imbibe that mood to feel that presence of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, who, you know, as we know, Lord Nityananda, without the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda, you can't even begin to understand Radha Krishna, you know. And he also is the one that grabs and brings to Lord Chaitanya, recommends, you know. He's the most magnanimous, Lord Nityananda. So, you know, hearing about all things Gora, Lord Nityananda, and, you know, of course, seeing the Maha Abhishek of the Panchatattva, which has been a long, long cherished dream, a long cherished desire for many years since I saw it on Mayapur TV, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, I guess, every 5 years. Saw that, and you know, when you're seeing that, it actually, that was like entering in the Mahaprakash Leela, seeing that. And that was a very beautiful experience that, you know, probably for another day, another time, but, you know, it's all there for us, you know, and when we remember these personalities and dig a little bit and really try to dive in, it's so easy to access, you know, it's very accessible, very relatable, especially the Gaura Leela, because it just happened. It's said that Gaura Leela is really, in the time of Lord Brahma, it happened 3 seconds ago. So we can put that in perspective. It's not very far back, so really easy to grab that. And even, I'll say, I don't know, this might sound offensive, but Vrindavan's becoming hellishly built up. There's even a Best Western in Vrindavan now. You know, it's so many high rises. Even when I first went there in 2011, it's practically unrecognizable. Meanwhile, wandering through Navadvip, there's really not that much trash. Everything's still the same. You know, it's still very beautiful. There's so much agriculture going on. You know, you can easily find a mango grove not far by that you can imagine probably Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda were wandering around in. You know, it's still very beautiful and lush. And so, all glories to Navadvip. All glories to Navadvip, all glories to the pastimes of Lord Gauranga and Lord Nityananda and these wonderful acharyas that bring us closer to those pastimes and help us to dive deeper into those pastimes. All glories to Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj and to Rasikananda Prabhu, the deliverer of so many fallen souls. Let us all pray that we can be as magnanimous as he, who was very kind and merciful, even to a town full of Jagai and Madai, town full of them. Even the king, even the rulers were like Jagai and Madai. Jai. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, who gave us access to all these things. Yeah.
Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Bharavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandar Bhagom Vidamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasa Sakale Priya Priti Manti Vasyan Dipan Kayanti Chiram Naganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrahasya Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami 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 Govindam.
This in a while. 39. Jeev jago, Gaura Chandra Bole Jeev Jago Jeev Jago Gaura Chandra Bole Kota Nidra Jao Maya Pishachira Kole Nidra Jao Maya Pishachira Kole Pajibo Bolia Eshe Samsara Vitore Pajibo Bolia Eshe Samsara Vitore Bulia Rohile to me Have Yara Bare Bulia Rohile to me Tomare loite ami Hoi no avatara Loite ami Hoi no avatara Ami bina banduara Keache amara Ami bina banduara Keache tomara Enichia sauri maya Nasibaro lagi Enichia sauri maya Nasibaro lagi Harinama Mahamantra Lao Tumimagi Mahamantra Lao Tumimagi Bhakti Vinora Prabhu Charane Pariya Se